Hey guys, it's Holly Tate, Vice President of Business Development here at Vanderbloemen. And today I'm joined by Sutton Turner, our COO here at Vanderbloemen. Sutton has led 6 different organizations, all of which had a global component. 4 of them were businesses, 2 of them were churches. Those churches were massive churches with global footprints. So Sutton, thank you so much for, first of all, your leadership for Vanderbloemen, but also your heart just to help ministries all over the country and world really understand how we can best steward our responsibilities as leaders as we're thinking about restructuring. This is a heavy topic. There's a lot of leaders dealing with this right now that have never had to think about having to let people go, furlough them, restructure their organization. So would love to hear from you today. What are the critical components that we need to stop and think about as leaders before we begin the restructuring process?
Yeah, thanks, Holly. I appreciate it. Unfortunately, I've had to do this several times and walk through different crises. In the Middle East, we had to go through an enormous amount of change and restructuring. Obviously, at Mars Hill, quite a bit of restructuring. And then a couple of the businesses that I've been a part of and helped lead, quite a bit of restructuring. And so I'd love to say that in every one of those instances, I've used these exact, but this has been developed after 6 different leadership opportunities. And so, Holly, really the first and most important, and whether this, and it was my case with leading a company in the Middle East, my first thing is to pray to Jesus, pray specifically through James 1:5, where it says, any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously to all without reproach, it will be given. So God wants to give us his wisdom. God wants for us to discern his will. And I think just some really good time, slowing down time and listening for God first and foremost. So that's where I say start out. And I don't say that as a Hallmark card. I actually mean getting on your knees and seeking God's will, and asking him for clarity. Because when you're in these situations, you need to be hearing from the Lord. The second thing is that throughout all of the decisions that you're going to make, you need to take a general theme of loving one another. You're going to make and be a part of a lot of hard decisions, but in every situation, you can do things with love. And that can be the overall theme. So yes, you might have to lay someone off. Yes, you might have to furlough someone. Yes, you might have to cut a ministry. Yes, you might have to take no longer have a service or a campus or whatever it is, but you can do it with love. And with that, I really mean that you're listening and you have empathy for the others that you are affecting. So every decision that you're going to make through this restructuring, it's going to change. It's going to have some type of ripple or direct effect, i.e. somebody's job or somebody's ministry that you're changing or terminating or whatever. With that, you need to have empathy on how they're going to feel as they get this information, and you need to lovingly help them through that. And what that means is literally changing places with them in your mind and preparing for how that person's going to feel and how that person is going to go home and tell their wife or tell their husband that they've just lost their job and face their kids and face the what they have to do and the differences and the difficulties, and go there in your mind to prepare yourself to have empathy for that other person. So that's super, super important. And then as you start working around the restructuring process, the third thing, so we've said we're going to pray, we're going to love one another, and we're going to have real serious empathy for the other person or the other people that are affected. The third thing is, Who are you going to trust to enter into the room of how to make the decision? Okay. Let's just say that you're a large organization. Let's say you have 30 and staff members that are part of your company. There's going to be maybe 2 or 3 people that are going to help advise you as a key leader. What you need to understand and think through before you invite them into that trusted space is, one, are they going to pray, and are they going to handle things with love? The third thing that you're going to ask those other people and think through before you do this is, what agendas are they bringing into this decision? This is really important. Everyone is coming from a standpoint of having an agenda. If you're asking a leader that typically leads, for example, Holly, just you and I, okay?
Mm-hmm.
You come from a place of business development, growth, marketing, communication. That's just your world, and you focus on that world. So when I would ask you to come into that type of decision, you're going to come in, and when we're talking about cuts to marketing budget, when we're talking about cuts to the marketing team or whatever those things are, that hits home. And so it's hard for someone to make a decision that directly negatively affects them and their team. And so you need to make sure that the people that are on the team are mature enough to be able to make those types of decisions, because they're not fun and they're very hard. And so that's the key part is you're praying, you're doing things with love, and you're having empathy with others. Then you're going to decide who's going to be in the room and help you participate. It's a super big question to think through and pray through. And then the fourth thing is time. You cannot rush this. It just can't be rushed. And what I mean by that is that you need time to the people. Let's just say that there's 3 people in the room with you. You need time for discussion. You need time for prayer. You need time for disagreement, because if there's disagreement, that's great, because you know that there's not groupthink in the room. People no fear. People feel like they can offer different opinions. If there is no disagreement and there's no discussion, then you know that there's fear in the room and you do not have unity, and you need to really look at that situation. But time to allow those things to progress, for people to pray through, for people to have new ideas, for people to bring things to the table. So we're talking multiple days, at the best weeks, that you can pray through these types of things and work on these plans. And then the last thing, and the fifth thing, and this is really important, is for the decision makers to agree that when a decision is made, we've all made the decision. So there might have been disagreements. There might have been differing opinions as what to do and how to do it. But when the group has made a decision, you need to clearly communicate that. Is that going to be the 3 of us are going to vote? Is that going to be the CEO is going to make the decision? Is that whatever's going to be determined is how the decision, if it's a board, is it going to be board vote and there's 7 members of the board? Does it have to be unanimous? Or can it be just 4-3 and the majority? You need to make that. Okay, so how are we going to make a decision? And then lastly, do we all agree that once the decision is made, we've made it with one heart, with one voice? We're not going to go back in time and reiterate on someone's opinion that was not adopted, someone's decision, or the way that they wanted to do things was not in agreement with the final, and so there's some disagreement. We're going to decide that when we finally make a decision, we're all going to own the decision as if we all were 100% in agreement, and we're going to go forward in there. Because that alignment's going to be, really important when we get into the next video, which is going to talk about how we're going to roll this out and how we're going to roll these changes out, because your team, especially if you're a close-knit team, they can smell disagreement. They can smell the distrust. They won't be all on board with the change if in fact they think, well, I think that there was some disagreement there. So it's really, really important as we look at making these overall parameters of restructuring.
Well, this is so helpful, Sutton. And what I'm hearing and what you're saying too is that it's so important that your church or your nonprofit or your Christian school, that you have the right leaders in place at the top. That's both on staff, but also in a board or an elder perspective. We have so many churches that we've seen where they don't have their bylaws set up, so nobody knows how decisions are actually supposed to be made, or they've had that elder that causes pain for everybody that no one's ever addressed because it's really hard. And then now they're in crisis and that person is causing a lot of problems for everybody. So these are five such great points. And it's so critical to have the right leaders in place so that anytime, but especially in crisis or when you're having to make really hard reorganization decisions, you can have that alignment because everybody is thinking about the health and long-term success of that organization and its impact in the kingdom.
Yeah, and Holly, if you're a young church and you've got younger, less experienced board members, or let's just say pastors, or however you're set up from a governance standpoint, it's okay to say, you know what, we're all in our early 30s and we've never made these kind of decisions. Let's go and seek some advice. And let's seek some wisdom, some godly wisdom of some people that maybe in the latter part of their career and have made some mistakes, some of these decisions before, and you can glean some wisdom from them. So even though, first of all, we're praying to Jesus for him to give us wisdom, Jesus also gives us wisdom through godly men and women that have walked through these types of decisions before. So feel very comfortable and typically you're going to want to look just right around you. Maybe it's somebody in your church that's already knows the situation and kind of the framework, or it's a business leader that's right there close to you. You need people that understand the culture. You need to understand the leadership style. You need to understand how some of these decisions will affect what the church or the nonprofit or the values-based business is all about. So I wouldn't go super outside. It's okay to get some outside consulting work, but the people that are in the room helping make the decision, you can have some facilitation from an outside consultant. But you really need to have the people in the room that really know and love your church. Well, that's really, really important. And they have some vested interest in it to see it through. Because during these time periods, when you walk through this, it's going to be hard. It's going to be really, really hard. And people, especially top leaders, are going to want to quit because it's not fun. And so as a result, if you have people that are helping you during that time period, but they love the church, it's their church, they love their community group, it's so important because you know that their heart is in the right place and they're trying to do the very best that they can to support you in these decisions.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Sutton, for sharing your wisdom on these 5 critical things we need to think through as a part of our staff structure and reorganization. So thanks so much.
Thanks, Holly.